From Geneva, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navanethem PILAY, who is one of the high-placed Africans in Geneva, whose mandate touched on to the debate this afternoon on good governance, development, peace and security. We are honored to have you here, Madam High Commissioner. You have the floor.
Forum for Dialogue here in Geneva on the occasion of the African Union's 50th anniversary celebration, and welcome the theme of governance, peace and security. Something is missing there, and His Excellency Mr. Obasanjo gave us the answer. When you asked, sir, what is the end goal of having governance, good governance, peace and security, and you said well-being of all people. Well, that's human rights. So if we can realize the human rights of all people, then that's the end we serve. In the United Nations, we talk in terms of three pillars: peace and security, development, and human rights. They are interlinked. You cannot have sustainable peace or sustainable development without delivering on human rights. These pillars need to be linked to make them stronger and more enduring and more able to respond to the realities and challenges of today, both in Africa and across the world. Our continent, and if I may speak here as a South African, has borne and continues to bear the legacy of conflicts that have caused untold numbers of deaths and widespread suffering, with women and children often the hardest hit, and that have exacerbated poverty and undermined development. Human rights violations are often a crucial factor in sparking conflict, and conflict is a major source of human rights violations. The worrying example of the Central African Republic, where state institutions are close to collapse, highlights the links between the lack of development, poverty, security, poor governance, and respect for human rights. So it is crucial to put human rights at the center of policies and decision-making processes. The Millennium Development Goals, to highlight a prominent example, were an important commitment by heads of states to lifting many people out of poverty. But as has now been widely acknowledged, the emphasis was largely socio-economic and did not address key civil and political rights. There has been recognition that many of the initial MDG successes could not be sustained, and that some of those societies that registered progress, including in Africa, are now embroiled in violence. That is why the post-2015 development agenda must be rooted in respect for all rights of all individuals, recognizing that unless development is equitable, it can never be sustainable. So I would urge African leaders to adopt a similar approach and to ensure that when devising and defining development policies for Africa, that human rights are at their heart. The African Union has a fundamental role to play in shoring up the pillar of human rights by using its influence with member states. The AU has a very good normative framework on human rights, including various human rights bodies and instruments, such as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. The AU's Constitutive Act itself places a focus on the importance of human rights by having as a key objective the promotion and protection of human and people's rights. So the African human rights architecture is there. It is in place. The challenge then is to strengthen and improve it. As High Commissioner for Human Rights, I often urge governments to place human rights at the center of their policies. And I make such a call to the African Union to integrate and mainstream human rights in all its activities and organs, as the UN has also attempted to do. In this regard, I welcome the unprecedented involvement of the AU in the protection of human rights in Mali recently through the deployment of human rights observers in the country and the deployment of a fact-finding mission led by the African Commission of Human and People's Rights. I also note with appreciation the coordination between the human rights observers of the AU and the UN human rights officers on the ground, and I encourage them to further strengthen this kind of cooperation. Let me highlight now how Africa and Africans can do more to advance the cause of human rights. The African Union and the member states that form it should be more willing to speak out on human rights issues affecting African countries. African nations should be ready when necessary to be critical of neighboring countries, but also to be ready to assist, helping to bring African solutions for African problems. This readiness to help, even to intervene, is written into the AU's founding document. Accountability is vital in the fight against impunity and to prevent recurrence of human rights violations. In this context, I have noted with great appreciation the remarks of the African Union Commission Chairperson, Her Excellency Dr. Nkasazana Dlamini ZUMA, to the extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government last weekend, when she declared that with the transformation from the OAU to the African Union, there has been a move from a policy of non-interference to the policy of non-indifference, the unequivocal rejection of impunity, and the promotion and protection of human and people's rights in accordance with the African Charter of Human and People's Rights. Indeed, upholding accountability for international crimes and grave human rights violations and ensuring that the rights of the victims of these crimes are respected should remain central preoccupations in Africa. In this context, I am concerned with the notion that sitting heads of state or government or other senior state officials are immune from prosecutions during their tenure of office. This would not be compatible with international law, notably a 2002 judgment of the International Court of Justice emphasizing that the immunity enjoyed by certain senior state officials does not mean that they enjoy impunity in respect of any crimes they might have committed, especially the gravest crimes. The statute of the International Criminal Court also provides that immunities which may attach to the official capacity of a person, whether under national or international law, shall not bar the court from exercising its jurisdiction over such a person, again on the basis that these are very serious crimes. I am confident that African leaders will remain committed to the noble goals of Article 4 of the AU's Constitutive Act and demonstrate that Africa is a continent where impunity is not tolerated and where victims have access to justice. More conscious efforts are needed to use the full spectrum of human rights to address the root causes of conflict and to manage post-conflict situations better with the overall aim of preventing a recurrence of violence. Processes to build peace and work for recovery, such as those seen in Burundi, Sierra Leone, and Liberia need the effective integration of the protection of all rights, civil and political, economic, social, and cultural. Africa faces daunting challenges to safeguard good governance, peace, security, and human rights. But it is also at the dawn of new opportunities. There has been remarkable economic growth, with projections showing that Africa will have the world's fastest growing economy of any continent over the next 5 years. And just as I was feeling excited about saying this statement, I'm reminded by what His Excellency Mr. Obasanjo said, that corruption is rife in almost all of African states. So that's a acknowledgement that has to be addressed. It is crucial that development in Africa be equitable and inclusive, benefiting all people, particularly the most vulnerable. Otherwise, it would do little to foster sustainable peace and security. For several years, my office has been working closely with the African Union and its human rights bodies. In 2010, we signed a memorandum of understanding. Since then, we've moved forward in strengthening the cooperation between us, cooperation founded on the recognition of the link between peace and security, development and human rights, with the aim of promoting and protecting human rights of all in Africa. As I said when the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, robust and decisive actions and inspired leadership are key to the effective implementation of human rights and in helping the most vulnerable and disadvantaged. Let me conclude by congratulating the African Union on its 50 years of working for Africans, working for the continent, and working for the peace, security, and development we wish for all Africans and for all people. And I wish you the very best for the coming 50 years. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.